Now, for the first time in its nearly 70-year-long history, the Supreme Court will get a permanent constitution bench for complex constitutional questions and interpret laws. This comes after the Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, wrote to the Prime Minister for an increase in the strength of Supreme Court judges. CJI Gogoi has decided to set up a 5-judge permanent bench to take up 164 long pending cases. Till now, only 1 or 2 benches function daily. So this, of course, comes in as most likely a historic decision for the Supreme Court, where a permanent bench could likely be set up in order to decide on important constitutional matters. As we were telling you, that this could be a major blessing for the Supreme Court, as the court is currently looking at 164 pending matters, 37 matters specifically pending for adjudication by Constitution Bench. And till now, as we were saying, there were only a couple of 3-judge benches which worked daily, which would take up such matters. So the fact that there could be a possibility of a 5-judge Constitution bench could be a big blessing. I'm joined by my colleague Meenakshi Bhanja, who has more on this story. Meenakshi, so we see that the Chief Justice actually looking at, we'll go back to Meenakshi on this, but as we were saying, that this is probably a landmark if this comes across in the 70-year-long history of Supreme Court, if it gets a permanent constitution bench. And Chief Justice has in fact written into the Prime Minister asking for an increase in the strength of Supreme Court judges. So how is this going to help the Supreme Court? As we know, there are 164 pending cases. Until now, only a couple of benches function daily, couple of 3-judge benches. And if the permanent 5-judge bench comes up, in fact, I'm joined by my colleague Meenakshi Bhanja. Meenakshi, please take us through the details of this.
Well, Tanima, at the outset, this is something which has been in the offing, and of course there is confirmation which is awaited from the Supreme Court. But yes, speculation is rife that perhaps in a long time the Supreme Court is for the first time set to have a permanent 5-judge constitution bench, which will be available round the year to adjudicate complex constitutional law questions and also go on to interpret laws. Now, if it is going to be a permanent constitution bench that indeed is going to be set up in the foreseeable future, Tanima, then the big question here would be if the 34 full strength now attained by the Supreme Court of working judges, whether the Supreme Court can permanently spare 5 judges to be sitting in a constitution bench composition, despite any substantive question of law not being there for adjudication. Because the process which is followed now is this, Sanima, that if and when a substantial question of law arises which seeks for the setting up of constitution bench, only then the Honorable Chief Justice of India goes on to set up a constitution bench composition, whether it be 5 judges, 7 judges, or as we saw in the right to privacy debate, it was a much superior bench composition. So there are several questions in the horizon for now. And also, we are looking at a prospective retirement date of incumbent Honorable Chief Justice of India for the 17th of November 2019. So whether or not the majority of the judges of the Supreme Court Collegium are indeed going to pass a resolution setting up this permanent constitution bench is something that remains to be seen.
Right, Meenakshi, of course, we'll be tracking this story with you. Thank you so much for joining us on that.